Well, we had some good news the other day for PSVR 2 physical game collectors, and that was that Red Matter 1 and 2 are getting disc releases, and obviously those are two of the best games on the system. Absolutely fantastic games, graphical showpieces, just really fun, great puzzle games. But yeah, nice to see them getting disc releases from limited run games, and but I have to say it is tinged with a little bit of frustration because you know, yet again this is a disc release for a PSVR 2 game many months after launch, and it means I've missed out because I'm not going to buy the game a second time just for the sake of having it on the shelf. But I always prefer to have my games on disc, you know, just for the consumer rights factors, that you actually own the games, that you can lend them to friends if you want. You can, you know, sell them on after you finish with them to fund further purchases. Just gives you more autonomy as a customer, actually owning them physically. You don't really own your digital games, and obviously we've seen some of the issues that can come from that, the reliance that you have on servers, and you can do less with it. And yeah, for me personally, I say lend them to friends. You know, I'm currently lending my spare PSVR 2 headset to a friend, trying to sell him on VR, and he's got a few of my games on disc, and that's coming handy, and that could generate future sales. You know, when he gives it back to me, and if he likes it, he's gonna have to go and buy them himself. But anyway, the benefits of physical media. But yeah, it's been a little bit bittersweet to see them come out on disc, and I've sort of already bought them, because I like to support developers of great games, you know. So I have bought a lot of games digitally, sort of at or near launch on PSVR 2, because I've been excited to play them, but also because, yeah, I want to just support these studios. And it's kind of you know, a bittersweet. Can't have your cake and eat it, really. Do I support the developers when they bring games out, or do I wait on the never, hoping that they get a disc release at some point in the future? And this has happened a few times now, where games have had physical releases many months after launch, but there's been no announcement at launch about the potential of a physical release. So that's the frustration, is where they don't tell you that they're considering a potential physical release. Then you're sort of in limbo. And so many times now, you know, yeah, I bought a game, there wasn't any indication it was going to come out on disc, and then lo and behold, it did several months later. And that's happened with Sea Smash VRS, that's happened with Crossfire Sierra Squad, Hubris, and a couple others, and now Red Matter 1 and 2. But it's hard to sort of know where there doesn't seem to be any correlation between the decisions or the factors that have been at play for studios, you know, deciding whether or not to put games out on disc. Because your first instinct is to say, well, they're waiting to see if the game is popular to validate putting out a physical release. But we've seen some very small, modest games from small studios get disc releases at launch. So, you know, it is doable. Some studios have decided to put out their games on disc at or very near launch, and springs to mind Seeker My Shadow, a fun little low budget platform sort of puzzler, and I'm sure there's a couple others, but yeah, Seeker My Shadow is definitely one to point to. Well, if a studio like that can put out a game like that on disc, then there really isn't that much sort of argument for, oh, we have to wait and see if it's going to be popular. But of course, the other equation to that is, once you've already sold the majority of, once you've already made your initial sales in the first however many months, to then say that there's a valid reason to put it out on disc because there's demand for it, well, people have already bought it. So it's a confusing sort of equation to try and understand, really. And actually on PSVR 2 as well, you have to wonder if they've diddled themselves out of sales or profit, because the PSVR 2 audience does skew older, whereas Quest is a lot of kids. Obviously they get bought the headset by the parents, they're playing a lot of free games, they don't have a disposable income, whereas PSVR 2 skews definitely to an older audience. You know, obviously it's more an investment, it's more adults playing it, buying it for themselves, and the older audience of course are the ones that are more likely to value physical media, because we are from that era where physical media was how you got your games, and we recognise the extra consumer rights or your autonomy that you get from having games on disc. So how many times or how many sales, how much profit has been lost to games not coming out on disc at or near launch? Because what I quite often do is I will wait to see if a game's coming to disc. After several months, if it seems like it's not, the studio's made no indication that they're considering it, right, then I'll say, okay, I'll get it digital, but I'll get it on sale to offset the sort of reduction in sort of, you know, the reduction that I see in having it digital versus physical. So I can sort of justify it to myself then, well, you know, yeah, I got it digital, but I paid half price. But then I've not supported the studio as much as I would have been happy to do if it come out on disc. You know, I'm very happy to buy games, good games of course, at launch at full price if it's on disc. So there's been quite a lot of times where I've bought games on sale, giving less money to these worthy developers making great games, because I'm just, you know, that's the equation as I see it. If I buy it digital, it's not really mine, so, you know, in my mind, I'd rather wait for a sale to offset that sort of that feeling of not really owning it. So yeah, it's a tangled web, isn't it? And you know, I know that obviously the larger scale picture is that platform holders and the industry in general would love us to go all digital, because of course, for those reasons, you know, no second-hand market, not as much incentive to do sales, more control over sort of, you know, monopolising prices in general, and all the rest of it. So yeah, I can see why. It's quite obvious why they'd want us to go all digital. But from a consumer standpoint, it's a big shift, and you know, they haven't sort of carried over the autonomy that we enjoyed for several decades, since the 80s as gamers. They haven't carried over all of the different sort of facets of what you get from buying a game over into the digital realm. So like, I might feel a bit differently about this if, for example, you could lend a digital license to a friend, and that might involve things like, you know, if you've lent it to your friend, that means you can't use it whilst they're using it. That'd be the same as having it on disc. Or that you could sell a game you're done with digitally. You know, I think there are some digital game platforms where stuff like that occurs. Is that right? Never been a PC gamer, so I don't know exactly how it works on Steam or other digital game sort of platforms, but yeah. I mean, that still wouldn't bring it up to the same level of sort of how I, you know, regard physical media, but at least it would sort of soften the blow a little bit. I've been able to do those things with your digital purchases, but let me go. You know when you say go on to somebody and they don't move, and then they say go on, and you're like, hang on, well, I've just said go on. I've said you go. You can't double go me, right? That's not a thing. If I say it first, then you go. Anyway, so that's it. Happy to see Red Matter 1 and 2 come to disc, but it does really sting, because I would have loved to have owned them on disc, but they gave no indication that that was on the cards. And it's over a year ago now. Is it like 18 months maybe since they came out, and I wasn't going to wait around that long. Those games are amazing. You know, so yeah, thanks Limited Run Games. And again, like, yeah, I know people might make excuses like, oh, it's expensive, it's a risk, they don't know if there's demand, blah 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 blah. None of those excuses are valid in my eyes, because of the fact that several times we've seen very small studios bring very modest games to disc at or near launch. So it's a case by case basis, I'm afraid. So no excuses. Alright guys, cheers, bye bye.